Welcome back to the Ridgeline Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Phelps Game Calls, with your hosts, David Crane and David Sandana.
All right, everybody. We are being joined with, I would like to call a reload expert. Um, Only because we've been asked a lot, and I have a lot of questions about reloading. So we're doing this for the listeners and for myself because I am getting into reloading and I am a beginner reloader, and I think it's a skill that a lot of people should get into if you shoot a rifle. So, Josh, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Josh GERTSCH. I live here in Tucson, Arizona. Got into reloading. Oh Lord, probably about 12 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. Can't really remember. It's kind of foggy now. It's been a while ago, and actually just got into it because of opportunity. I had a buddy that was selling his equipment,
Oh, nice.
and that's basically how I started.
So, besides reloading, do you do anything for fun?
I hunt quite a bit. Just got back from Nebraska on their rifle whitetail tag, and that was a very cold experience. We hunt as much as we possibly can down here, which we're pretty fortunate in Arizona. We can hunt a lot of months.
I'd like to
Um,
I'd like to dig into all the little nuts and bolts of reloading because there's all these different processes you have to go through to get there. But before we do that, I want to share my reloading experience and why I got started. And my wife now, I was dating her, and her grandfather had this old reloading press, the RCBS single stage, and I saw that and I was like, man, he probably knows I can get these rounds from my 270 WSM, and I Q&A'd him, and he was older and he showed me how to do it, and so I did it out of necessity because it was a little cheaper to reload than to buy new brass and bullets every single time. So I got into that and pretty much reloaded that religiously even to this day, but then picked up a couple rounds for buddies, and that's it. That's my extent.
yeah, I got into it about the same reason. I started out with a 300 rum, and the buddy that was selling his equipment had all the dies and everything you needed to reload for the rum. And the reason why I got into it was because the rum, the 300 rum, that was costing just the absolute fortune to buy. And my little brain at that time must have been really pretty small. Thought it would be a little bit cheaper and easier to reload, and not the case. It's not cheaper, but it definitely is more convenient.
Yeah, when you getting set up is the you can buy a lot of rounds getting set up.
And
And
that's what we
Absolutely.
want to get into to save the new reloader or someone that wants to get into it, what not to do and
or
like where
So
and where to start.
or do they even want to go down that road?
where to really
Mm.
start is we started with a case, and that really truly your actual cases, whether it's Lapula, Peterson, Hornaday, whatever case you have. It's really it's kind of a double-edged thing here. If you have once fired brass, you're way ahead of a curve that you're going to run into with having brand new brass. But your actual case is your quality of your component. That's where the quality starts, is that case. Um, so I'm not going to name names, but I'm going to say, my once fired brass, brand X. Um, I got it to shoot extremely well, but it wasn't consistent when I first started. It's not until I got a lot going into this a lot later with all of the information out there nowadays compared to 12, 15 years ago. It's 9-day difference. But you're going to have differences in that brass. And that's where my inconsistencies are. You can make your brass good, You just got to spend a lot of time with it. But your case, that's where we're really starting is our case.
So
We want to take really good care of it. And we want to have if you're just starting out, if you have once fired brass, go through the processes that we talk about today. It will make it, a better brass. You'll have to do some things to it, obviously, that we're going to talk about later. But a good quality cartridge, good quality brass is really at the base of good, solid reloading. That's where your quality is going to start.
if you had to,
Then after we get, go ahead.
sorry about that. I was going to say, can we define good quality brass so people know what they're
Quality
looking for?
brass. So, for instance, is quality brass is the thickness of it and the capacity of it and the weight of it. And I'm going to use Lapula and Peterson for this discussion. Those two, when you get a box of 50 or a box of 100 from Peterson and Lapula, you go and weigh those cases brand new right out of the box. That whole box, of Peterson won't deviate, but maybe a grain and a quarter or 1 grain in weight.
Okay.
Thickness, it's all the same. It's all the same thickness. We're going to talk about neck thickness a little bit. But your thicknesses of your neck, when you buy a batch of brass, they're all the same. We're talking 14 to 16 thousandths. That's how thick the neck is. Okay. We're not going to get into measurements. We don't want to confuse what we're trying to talk about.
We're getting deep already.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want to dive into the weeds. That's for a different day. Because there's lots of weeds, and they get really, really tall, and you can't see out of them.
So you're talking about the variance between the weights of brasses right now.
You're talking about the variance weights, and in the high quality brass. Not here to promote it, but it's just a standard. Their volume is consistent and the same. And when your internal volume of your case is consistent from a batch of 50 or a batch of 100, it makes your life a lot simpler. Because volume does relate to what we're doing.
At this point, I want to go in. I want to dive deeper. I don't know if we should or not. Can I just touch on something real quick? Just maybe
go for it.
Because the cylinder inside your receiver, right, in the barrel, everything is factory made. It's supposed to be this dimension to the 1,000. So basically, what I'm getting from what he's saying is that if you have brass that's supposed to be a certain size, but the weights vary by a little bit, your cylinder volume of powder decreases, which overpressures the round.
So what we're coming down to is your case capacity. And your case capacity changes your pressure.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use 2 examples right now. So the example that when I talk about consistency in brass and good brass. So when I go and weigh my 280 Ackley Improved, I use Peterson brass. And I will weigh 20 cases with water in it. And it will weigh 72 grains of water. And I will look at the extreme spread between those cases. And you are going to get a variance, but it's a half a grain. Let's take brand X. Now, brand X, on the other hand, when you weighed all those cases out, there was like 9 to 10 grain difference because you have, you've got one shot brass like I used to do. One shot brass, you buy it as you can get it. Well, you have 9 grade difference in the actual case itself. Well, that actually then ends up translating into the volume of your case too.
So there's more empty space under your bullet.
So there's more. Yeah, one will have shallower, more space than the other as far as capacity, and that changes your tune. It changes your balance. It changes the overall volume of it.
So
that
everything
makes-
here, accuracy is about consistency, everything being the same
Accuracy-
over and over and over.
Yeah.
That is correct. The number one thing about reloading is consistency. I started out with stento pads, and I got more stento pads than Carter's got pills. But if I get a new gun, I have a stento pad that's designated just to that gun. I write down every single process, tweak, whatever I kind of experiment with that load and with that gun.
I have the same pad right here. I have a couple of my buddies' rounds. I'm making notes on how it shot, how they shot it, what we had to change, all that stuff. And
I've started.
yeah, right.
I have one
So
started.
make sure you make a note on what you're doing so you don't have to do that again if it's not working great.
Yep.
Awesome. So so we want to start with the best cartridges we can.
That you
afford.
can
We're going to
get,
try to use the best brass.
Mhm.
Now I'm going to put a caveat to that. Once fired brass puts you, just miles ahead, because it's been fired in your chamber. You've expanded it, to all of the little caveats, how your chamber was cut. You're going to resize it with a good quality resizing die. And that volume is going to be consistent, and it's going to be fit for your chamber. So when we're resizing brass, though, the one thing that was hammered into me when I started, and I saw a couple of things, there's videos out there, full length resize. If you have a neck sizer, I was told this when I got my set: sell that thing, get rid of it. You're not using it, because that will get you in trouble.
I had problems with neck sizers. I've never owned one.
Full length resizing is the only, everybody from the top down in competition hunting, in all of the sports that we have within shooting, full length resize.
I've had people tell me to get a neck sizer. I'm like, well, how do you form the cartridge? Like, what if you don't have it seated just right and you overpress it, right? Because it's going to run into a wall. If it's too deep, it's going to hit it. It can shrink your cartridge a little bit, and then you try to put it back in, it runs into the receiver, and now it doesn't fit in your gun. So I always thought that. I was like, what the heck is going on with this neck sizing? Because I never got into it.
So, yeah. So I'm not going to even talk about neck sizing.
Okay, skipping on. Let's get off. It's a bad idea. Let's not do the neck sizing.
Bad idea. That's not even.
Hey, that's all right.
We want to know how we get to a perfect group.
Go down. So when you're resizing your piece of brass, so if it's been, it's fired in your gun. So the best way for this, and it's explained in various different ways, but I'm going to explain it. When you go to resizing that piece of brass, you're going to need some certain tools to measure when we're resizing brass. And I'm going to go through my process, and I'm going to let's go back to where we have the brass. So we kind of got a little bit far off of there. So there's one of two things when it comes to, having a good quality cartridge. We're either going to put it in the tumbler, or there's guys that do the wet media. And there's another way too. If my black brass is coming from the range and it's not dirty and dusty, and depending on if it's in a really clean environment, I probably won't put my brass in the tumbler when it comes back. It has to be really dirty and grimy for me to throw it in the tumbler.
So you shoot your cartridge.
Not something that I do on a consistent basis as far as go and clean it, because it's already been cleaned once and it's in good shape.
Got it. So when you talk about the media, after people say they want to clean the brass, and there's like all this media, there's ceramic, there's corn cob, there's different type of basically abrasives. You put this thing in a tumbler, it rubs the surface and cleans all the stuff off of it. But when you say wet media, what specifically are you referring to? Like what would make it wet?
So there's a couple other companies out there that have they are like steel, and I've not learned enough about it, but it's a water solution, and it has stainless steel pellets slash beads in it that it goes through a cycle and cleans that brass in a wet solution.
Gotcha. So you're talking about like one of those sonic machines.
I have one.
Like,
when,
yes,
yeah.
the
Gotcha.
Hornaday has a sonic machine. Yes.
Oh, okay.
It can't hold.
Absolutely.
The one that I have can't hold a whole lot. Like for rifle rounds, it would have to be like, pistol rounds or something like that. If you want to toss a lot in there.
Well, I instantly thought like a wet media because I've taken I think it's called flitz. It's like a machine polishing media, and you sprinkle some of that in your corn cob.
Oh
and
yeah,
it
I use
freaking
that.
shines the crap out of whatever you're putting in there. It makes them really nice,
does.
you know.
Yeah.
It does. So when it comes to that, I mean, unless it's been in a really dirty environment, and I don't competition shoot, so my brass typically isn't in those environments, right now. So my brass is relatively clean, to resize.
Mhm.
So what I'll end up doing is I'll come back and I do this in batches just for time's sake, because time is one thing that I have really been pressed upon. I mean, it's fun to be in the reloading room, and I personally enjoy it, but there's other things in life that need to be done.
Right.
I mean,
you got to have some time to spare if you're going to be reloading.
Correct, and that's where I think a lot of you can develop a process as complicated as you want and time consuming as you want when it comes to reloading, or you can kind of weave your way into a process that actually, it's still going to take time, but it's not going to take you days.
So what's your magic formula for getting rounds out the door?
Rounds out the door.
Your process.
My process. So for instance, what I'll do is typically I try to have everything prepped. I'll have a batch of stuff prepped. But my typical process, I come in here, I turn on the powder charger, I let it stay and get warmed up for an hour or two, get used to the environment. I'll come in here and then just I'll already have these cases annealed. Typically that's what I do in batches. I'll anneal a whole batch of brass.
Mm-hmm.
And annealing is basically getting it actually saves the brass, but it's also that it's helping that brass get back to its original form. Okay.
Now, the annealing process, just for people that don't know what it is, just like I'm not fully understanding because you're probably gonna school me on it right now. But from what I think I know is that the annealing is the warming of the brass with a flame to make it softer so you can resize it without breaking it. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, so I'm good there. So do you have like instruction? How do you determine what you're going to do with a bullet cartridge? If someone brought you a 30-06 and said, "I want some really accurate rounds," what is your go-to, or where do you find the information that you need to determine where's going to be your start point on making that bullet, and all those little details? And we don't have to get into like the case overall length, all that other stuff. But what are you gonna do? What do you do to find out what they're doing or what they want you to do?
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use it. I'm not going to use a 30-06 because I have no clue about.
How about let's use Kirk's? Let's use Kirk's.
I'm going to use a 6.5 Creedmoor.
There we go.
Any round but 6.5 Creedmoor.
The
28
hated
Nosler.
and the loved case by all.
Yeah, this is a perfect one because Dave does not like the 6.5. So let's go ahead and jump right into that, Josh. That sounds great.
I have yet to shoot one.
I got one.
So so when I originally got my 6.5 Creedmoor, I was probably one of the last on the bandwagon, as I say. Everybody else had one that I knew, except for me. And when I finally got one, I was actually buying factory ammo at that point in time. I didn't even think about reloading for it yet. So I got a bunch of factory ammo, and this factory ammo, that Precision Hunter from Hornady, shoots lights out. Okay. But it comes to a point in time where you get tired of looking for it, and you have all of this brass, so you start reloading for it.
Yep.
So what I come down to is I just went into the Hornady manual, and I looked at their charges, or what their, where they were. As far as max, I came down probably, I guess probably about 2 grains off of max. And what I did is I did just I'm going to call it a ladder test for better. That's what it was. I did a chronograph ladder test, and I found kind of a relatively flat spot. I worked in there, and it's truly one of the easiest cartridges to reload for is the 6.5 Creedmoor. I played with the charges until I found a flat spot in the velocity. That is one thing that I was not taught as a new reloader. Your best friend when you're reloading is to own a chronograph. And today, it's really gotten pretty affordable. I use the Magneto Speed. I wish I had a lab radar. But you need to have a chronograph.
So
that is the best tool when it comes to reloading, besides the other equipment that you have.
So once you have your round 6.5 Creedmoor,
Yep.
Say that with my pinky out.
Yeah, man.
You have a 6.5
like a
Creedmoor.
cup of tea.
Then you have a Hornady brass, and you're going to shoot a Hornady bullet, whatever it is that they have. You're going to use their manual, the Hornady reloading manual, to determine what they've already done, because they've already done these tests. They already know pretty much what that'll do. Now you're trying to match up your grain of powder charge to your bullet, and then dial in all the harmonics and all the other stuff that come along with shooting the gun.
That is correct.
So now that's why you're going to fluctuate your powder up or down. But you don't want to start at the max, because then you'll be way above, and it's a danger zone. Start low. What do you increasing your powder charge by? Say if you loaded 10, and then you loaded another 10, another 10. Would you change those loads by a grain, half a grain, 3/10 of a grain?
This is so. And there's a lot of information. A lot of people do it in a lot of different ways. But this is what I've established for my reloading. If it's 50 grains or less for capacity, or a charge, I will do in 2/10 increments. So, for instance, in the 6.5 Creedmoor, I'm going to start at 39. I'm just going to throw out. I'm going to start at 39.8, and in 0.2 increment, 2/10 increments, I'm going to load up to 41.8.
Okay, to get to the max charge
with the chronograph, and then I'm gonna get those numbers, and I'm gonna write them down. I'm gonna look at it, but it's not a Bible. That's not showing you exactly where you need to be yet. You're gonna try it again where you saw that the intervals in between each. Let's say I'm gonna use this one for an example. 41 grains, 40.2 grains, and 40.6 grains only increased by 8 feet per second, 6 feet per second, 4 feet per second.
Hmm.
I'm going to concentrate in that area. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to test and see how durable that load is, or how consistent the velocities are in that range. And then when I go through that process again in that 41 grains to 40.6 grains, then I'm going to fine tune that after I shoot that and see where I can get my goal right now is to find a very low extreme spread.
Okay. Now I'm tracking because I was kind of lost. So if you had something going,
that's what because a ladder test or the Satterley test just shows you where you want to start kind of concentrating your efforts in. And what I mean by over a chronograph, the efforts is where it starts not jumping up so high.
Yeah, so if you load it a little bit different and it's 50 feet per second different.
Correct.
You don't want to do that. You want it to be
right.
Little increments.
If 39.8 in 40 grains has a 30 feet a second difference, that's not where I'm looking for.
So you want the smallest amount of increment.
You want the speed gainage. You want to look for that smaller increment in between your 0.2 grain jump.
Okay, timeout. I got a question.
Yeah.
Given that
this is why a chronograph's really, really important when you're doing reloading.
I'm getting schooled here because I didn't do it this way. I reverse engineered what you're telling us to do, and it was based on.
I did it that way too.
And so basically what you're looking for is to find a spread in your chart where your margin of error in your powder measure doesn't affect your shot.
Right.
Is that right? So if you said I'm loading 39.8, but if I accidentally go 39 or 40, now my shot's way off. But if I'm at 40.2 or 40.4, the difference is 6 total feet. You're not changing anything.
No, I'm not.
But
I'm going to concentrate in that area where I have those small steps in velocity.
And that is just in case there's a powder error, right?
Small one. I mean, it's
very minute, but I mean you can get away with it.
Well, it's like shooting a fast arrow out of a bow.
Right,
you don't have to be really good with the yardage, So you're decreasing your odds of having an error. That's going to make you a flyer, So is that correct?
Yes.
Man, that's genius.
Okay,
so the thing about
what
it
I got on
is
Amazon,
that,
right?
So when it comes to weighing powder, the one thing that I have personally experienced, nowadays, what was available 15 years ago, to my knowledge, I'm not saying that I was out there, digging in the Google world of figuring out what was out there for scales. But what's available for scales today compared to what I started with, and what compared to really what a lot of the people that I learned from used and started with, is night and day difference.
Yeah,
I'm running an auto trickler with a medical scale right now.
Yeah, I started out with an RCBS triple beam that was handed down, and then or basically a powder scale, and then I had a manual trickler, and I would use that, and then I went to a Hornady, I think it's called a Charge Master, and then I double check those every 5 rounds. So I'm weighing that on a scale every 5 rounds to make sure.
I'm pretty much putting it in by fingertips.
That's how I started, and you need to, because you're going to want to check it. You want to move up because it's going to increase your ability to reload more.
Right.
But if you're doing small batch now, I mean, get used to reading that scale. But you have to know, it's like reading a tape measure. If someone says 12 inches and they put a line on the paper or wood or whatever you're cutting, and you say, do you want me to take the line off or leave it on? When you're looking at your scale, you need to know when that scale goes to even, am I going to be on the right side of that line? Am I just touching the line? Am I dead center of the line? And that's a difference on those scales. So I still don't know the answer to that question. I double check it I do the Charge Master, then I double check it, and I've always determined it's going to be dead square with my meter mark and my scale mark. It's got to be the same, lined up side to side.
Now, if everybody is getting kind of confused with like the equipment that we're using, we are going to have another podcast where we actually talk about the more in depth with the equipment that you need to reload. Right now, we're just working on the cartridge and where you need to be to even get to those points.
Yeah. So right now we're talking about creating the charge in the round that gives you consistent velocities out of your gun with a small margin of increase as possible between loads, so you can have some little room for variance, because we're talking about measuring one side of the mark. Maybe it's on the other side of the scale. That could be the 2/10 difference. And if it's a big jump like 30 to 40 feet, that's going to make sure that's not going to make you be an accurate shooter. So
That is correct. That has been my experience. That I find that I find that spot in the velocity where it's not jumping up 15 and 20 at a time in between charges. And when you're doing 2/10, we're talking really, really, I mean, 2/10 is literally not a lot of powder.
it's like
We're
one
talking about a
flake.
couple kernels of powder sometimes.
Now on your
That's 2/10 of a grain is 2 or 3 kernels is 2/10
yeah,
of a grain.
I've been reloading with the Vita the N165 since like 2005, and them suckers are heavy. Like a kernel on that thing, that'll put you up, probably almost 2/10 of a grain, just one little, because they're cylindrical. For one, they're not like a lot of powders where they're like a BB or a flake, more flaky.
Right.
They're like,
looks like pencil lead.
Yeah, like pencil lead. So, I have to be real selective. So I'm looking, like when I grab one and I have to just barely put it on there, it's got to be a tiny sucker, because they can be, I would say the average is probably like 3/32 of an inch, just over a 16th. And I mean, they can change the scale dramatically. If you put 3 on there, you're screwed. So I'm like, damn, they got to remeasure the whole weight.
Right. So the one thing that I want to get back to, after we resize, so everything that I do is down. I'm gonna go back to, I'm gonna kind of try to go back to resizing. So when I'm using my resizing die, I take out the decapping pin. Everything, I don't use the stem and the ball to resize my brass, because what I'm doing is I am universal decapping. I use a Mighty Armory universal decapper, and then I will put it through the resizer. Right after that, everything's down, because I'm going to set the headspace back when I'm resizing 1.5 to 2 thousandths.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that the important part of setting the headspace back, and this is kind of, and you're going to be, when you go to running your press, you're thinking you're going to absolutely squash the case. You're not. But you're going to overcam that a little bit, because you're trying to push. And this is you got to have measuring tools. But the reason why you're pushing that headspace back is so it chambers the next time you go and feed it. So I'm going to give you an example. If you were to go through and just do the regular directions, resize it with just one turn on the shell plate, and you keep on going and you're not pushing that head back, you're going to go about 2 or 3 firings. You're going to reload, let's say 20 rounds, and you're going to go out, drive an hour to the shooting range, and they won't chamber.
So
because it's moved the shoulder out after all those firings, with you not pushing that shoulder back. It ain't going to fit in the chamber no more.
So when
that's why it's important to have some measuring tools, because you're going to have to eventually, regardless of your process in reloading, when you're resizing brass, eventually you're going to have to push that shoulder back. but you're going to also have to know what a baseline is for your chamber.
So when he's talking about measuring tools, you're not just going to grab your
Hey,
measuring
man.
tape and do that. You're going to need a
You're
micrometer.
You're not going to grab your caliper and go, okay, where do I measure? Because there's nothing to measure with your caliper. So what I started with is Hornady has some headspace collets, and I have now transitioned to I use Short Action Customs. I use their headspace gauges and their ogive gauges. Personally, I like the Short Action Customs gauges because I think it fits around the degree of your shoulder better. For me personally, it gives me a better measurement. Not saying that Hornady stuff, it doesn't. I use that for years and years and years. I just graduated to the Short Action Custom stuff that goes right around the shoulder. It just measures at a different part around the shoulder. It's measuring the whole shoulder. And I'll measure that as soon as my brass comes back from the range. After I've whether it's factory stuff that I've shot or it's my reloads, I'll measure all of those fired cases and get an average of what my actual measurement is to my head. And then I'm gonna back that resizing die back down in the press until I can push that shoulder back about 1.5 to 2 thousandths. My goal is 2 thousandths.
And that's a small.
My personal goal is.
I mean,
Yeah,
you
that's
can't
like
even,
You're
minute.
always going to have spring back.
can't even see 2000s. So
You can't see 2 thousandths.
yeah, yeah. So we're when you fire a bullet, right? The cartridge is in the gun. Obviously, the pressure expands the case. It's going to work its length towards the lands and grooves in your barrel. So occasionally you have case neck trimming and all that stuff. We're going to get into it. But when you resize it, you're trying to make sure the bullet geometry still fits the cartridge regardless of the neck length. Correct?
Okay, so this actually doesn't have anything to do with the neck. It actually has to do with
The shoulder of the casing.
yeah, your 35,
Yeah.
for instance, we're going to use 300 or the 280 Ackley Improved. You're going to use your 7mm 40-degree angle shoulder gauge, and you're going to put on top of that. It's the shoulder, not the neck, that you're pushing back.
The angled portion.
Right.
The
Yeah,
angled
correct.
portion,
So if you-
portion of the case is the shoulder.
Yep. We'll have a little diagram up on our Instagram page. We'll have a little arrow showing where the shoulder is if you're confused. If you are confused, then maybe you shouldn't be reloading. But
Not yet. We're gonna get.
yeah,
We'll get you there. Yeah.
We'll get you there.
Or not. This is kind of the discovery process where you can determine. At the end of this, we're gonna say, what does it cost? If you wanted to go out and say tomorrow I'm gonna reload, what do I have to invest just to make 50 to 100 bullets? Is it gonna
Let's
be
just say it's cheaper than a dirt bike.
Yeah, or a Ferrari.
Yeah,
So we got
no
that.
kidding. That is no kidding. This is not a cheap hobby.
What hobby's cheap? Find me
There
one.
isn't one.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, if this is something that you want to do, you're gonna have to spend some money. That's just the
There
reality
isn't
of
one.
it.
I showed and then ended up raising livestock for quite a few years out of high school, and that's not a cheap adventure.
No, our buddy was a new farmer, and he realized that holy hell, it's expensive, but he loved it.
Yeah, it was more therapy than
Yeah.
It wasn't for profit. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
That's how I got into this.
Yeah, right. It is therapeutic. You get in there and you they say when you're reloading, you want to be paying attention to everything. Don't.
Yeah,
Your mind is clear, and you're focused on just getting these rounds.
You want to be focused because if you have overcharge or double charge, people double charge stuff, and you're like sitting here going, I don't know how they fit it in there, but maybe they put the wrong measurement in first and don't know they didn't clear the cartridge, and they put more in there. Something happens. Next thing you know, they created a dangerous situation. whether that's just for the firearm or themselves or people around them, whatever. You need to be paying attention when you're doing it. Don't have Alexa playing music. Maybe if you do, have her low after you've done it for a while. Definitely don't be drinking, and have somebody giving you some tutelage up front. Listen to this podcast and learn something, and then reach out and we'll get you head in the right direction. Let's jump back into preparing the cartridge for reloading.
So after I resize those, and before I go through and resize anything, I have already annealed. Okay, I anneal all of my cases. That way that I can get consistency with my brass, my neck tension, and my resizing. That's the three main reasons why I'm going to anneal. And then I'm going to resize it. I'm going to push that shoulder back 2 thousandths so that I can eliminate, chambering issues. So once I got all of that process, this is I use it on a progressive to do most all of my calibers. There's a couple calibers that I do on my single stage press. But I haven't found I have not found any more consistency personally from my progressive press versus my single stage. Okay. So after I got everything, after I got everything resized, and let's talk about resizing lube for just a second.
Hmm.
So this has been my experience, and thank gosh, I heard something a couple years ago about universal decapping and taking out the stems in my resizing die. One shot is great for cases that you personally have already resized. In my personal opinion, this is just personal opinion. One shot is great to lube your cases with. If you've already resized them and you shot them out of your gun and you know how they resize. Otherwise, I have a few calibers that I cannot use one shot lube. I have to go to the alcohol lanolin mix.
Mm.
And even some of them, I use the Imperial wax, like the big nasty cartridges, like the 28 Nosler, the 300 rum. Those cases like that, I put Imperial wax on those cases to resize them. I've had no stuck cases that way. The one shot, I've had some stuck cases, and I tell you what, in a progressive press with the decapping stem and the ball already in that die, oh boy, you're going to work at trying to get that case out.
Plus, you have 4 other rounds or 5 other rounds in the rotation that you're messing with at the same time.
I don't do everything. That's the one thing that I've gotten away from. I don't have everything full on my progressive press.
So you'll put. So let me pause real quick. Let's take a small break. We want to talk about the difference between the presses real quick. So we don't jump ahead, but we're going to talk about the difference between a progressive and a single stage when we come back from this commercial break.
All right. This section of the broadcast is brought to you by Burpaw, burpaw.com.
Use Ridge15 at checkout to receive a sweet discount.
Hey everybody, if you are looking for a game call that is elk, turkey, deer, predator calls, waterfowl calls, we highly recommend PhillipsGameCalls.com. Professional grade game calls made for every hunter.
Archery hunters, listen up. If you find yourself in the heart of King County, do yourself a favor and stop in at Rock Creek Archery, located in Tukwila. They have everything you need if you're just beginning to the sport or you've been shooting for 20 years, even an indoor shooting range. Or check them out at rockcreekarchery.com. Before we move forward with the single stage versus the progressive press, I want to rewind a hair because I had some intrigue with the universal decapper that I'm not familiar with. And for everybody who doesn't know what a decapping pin does, when you have a resizing die that has a decapper in it, you press it down and it will take the primer out of your cartridge.
Yes.
But he's not using that in his resizing die. He's taking it out, and he's using a universal decapper. And I think the reasoning behind it is genius and intriguing. So he told me what it was, but I'm gonna let him tell you what it was.
So we use the universal decapper because it remove the ball and pin from our resizing die, because when we're setting that shoulder back on that piece of brass 1.5 to 2 thousandths, it's counterproductive to pull that ball back out of the neck when we've tried to set the neck, try to set the headspace / shoulder back. Because what happens when you use that ball and pin in a resizing die is you're going down through the neck and you're pushing the shoulder back, but it's pulling that ball back through the shoulder and the neck. Well, that's not helping you, set that shoulder
Resize
back.
the
That's
shoulder.
why we're eliminating that pin.
So it's almost counterproductive.
It is counterproductive because you're going to let this. It's already going to spring back.
So,
brass is already going to spring back anyways.
So I have a question.
Yes.
How are you getting the primer out if you take all that out?
Does it before?
That's what you're using, the universal decapper first. I mean, you can use the universal decapper whenever you want to get the primer out.
So it still has the actual pin.
It absolutely do not. You take everything out. You take all the guts out. Because all you're doing is resizing the outside of the case. Yes. You're not resizing the inside of the case at all.
So on the resizing die, you're going to remove the cap and ball pin.
Yep, you're removing the whole pin.
But on the universal decapper, it's just a pin.
But the universal decapper, you're using that just to deprime the case. That's all you're using that
Gotcha.
for.
Okay.
And there's no ball on that one.
Okay.
Absolutely not. It's just a straight pin.
So it doesn't. So it doesn't essentially as if you're using a single stage, as you're coming back up, you don't get like that stuck part.
Nope.
Yep.
Nope. On a single stage,
that makes awesome
you're
sense because
any resistance whatsoever.
Yeah. So
all you're doing is knocking the primer out.
Yeah. So I'm using a single stage, and that's where I kind of get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm coming back up, the shoulder is probably not set correctly. I don't know, but until we get to that point,
you're going to set it. So we're going to use just an exaggerated example. So if you had the resizing die with the pin and the ball in there,
yep,
you're going to push down. You're going to push that shoulder back 2 thousandths, and then you're going to pull that back ball back through the neck of the case, which is pulling on the shoulder and the neck as you bring it, upstroke.
Mm-hmm.
Well, everything you push down, you're probably bringing back up.
Mm-hmm.
No, that makes total sense.
That brings me to lube.
Yeah.
So case lube, we were just talking about.
Yep, and I had to use a lot of it. Mm-hmm. I have the one shot.
Lubing the outside of the case, and a lot of people they'll lube the neck inside because when they pull that ball out, it gets stuck. And that lube, when they come down, will help to get that out of there. So at this point, how necessary is that lube in that step?
Pretty freaking necessary.
So the lube is in this process from universal decapper to resizing. Lube is for the outside of the case so you don't get stuck. And as we were talking about before earlier, the one shot is great for certain cases, I believe, because I use a lot of it. But I have certain cases that I have to use the Imperial wax or use the alcohol lanolin mix. Because I've had more stuck cases with the one shot with certain calibers than I really want.
So when you first started resizing, did you ever press a cartridge and have a dimple in the neck?
Yes.
Okay. So what was the cause of that?
Well, this costs money.
You want to tell me off air, or is it?
No. So I used to have a problem that I would be on my and I'm going to use my 300 wisdom for this example. And this is what I really showed it. It showed its face. It was like twice or 3 times fired cases and I was resizing it. And I'm like, man, I cannot. I mean, these shoulders look like they got, literally like they're trying to crunch. I wasn't overcamming the press. I wasn't doing anything different than I had done to load them up. But this is my story of where it costs money. As soon as I got the annealer, I have never had a shoulder have dimples in it ever again after I got the annealer.
So it's just too hard. It has to give somewhere, and the neck's not going to give. The shoulder's going to give.
The shoulder is going to give because you're pressing down. I think everything's going to give, but the shoulder, the neck doesn't have. It's just going up through there.
Yeah.
But when you're resizing everything, the body of the case and everything, where that portion hasn't been annealed, it's just so flipping soft that it has nowhere to go.
If I'd have known this 3 weeks ago, I would have put that on my Christmas list. I need an annealer, babe.
I could have given you guys a Christmas list of as long as my leg.
Oh man.
But that's where I personally have found, it'd be 2 or 3 times fired cases that I was going to reload again. I'd resize them and they'd have those dimples in the shoulders. Mm-hmm. And after I started annealing cases, I've never had a dimpled shoulder ever again.
Well, I know it's coming. I know it's coming here. I have to get one of those things.
The annealer does so many things for the longevity of the case and your consistency of your resizing and your neck sizing, or your I shouldn't say neck sizing, your full length resizing and getting your neck diameter consistent.
Well,
and that's where we're going to move into once we're resizing, we've already annealed the case, we've resized it. Now we're going to run it through the mandrels. And that's where we're going to stick. Mandrel is going to space the neck out to a certain size to accept the bullet.
Okay.
And this is where our neck tension plays an important part of our reloading process.
So the mandrel would have done what the ball would have done.
The mandrel does what the ball
would have done if you weren't trying to get
without the
Correct.
neck stress.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay. And I have found depending, and this is where really depending on, what, we're not even going to worry about that tonight, but we're going to mandrel. There's a possibility that you will have to lube those necks to mandrel. Mm-hmm. Some of our resizing dies, for Sammy spec, crimp those necks down really pretty small. So what I have ended up doing progressively is I will stage mandrel, and that's where I'm going to set the size of the neck where we're going to place that bullet into that case. So for instance, if I want 2,000th neck tension for the 264, we're going to stay on the Creedmoor because David really loves that caliber.
That's right. Yes.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, for that 264 caliber bullet, I'm going to use a 261 for my first stage. And then I'm going to go to...
Hold on a second. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
These mandrels, are they coming in just like incremental of 1,000s?
They come in incremental 1,000s.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
So
that's where the laundry list comes from.
They actually come
That's
in
where
halves.
the money comes in.
They come in halves. They come in halves. They come in ones, but they also come in half thousands too. So what I started out with originally, because of actually a podcast very similar, is that I started with the Sinclair. And then I gravitated towards the 21st Century and K&M Industrial. And they have those mandrels where they're in half thousandths increments to get your neck sizes the way you want them. And you have to play with it. Most of my loads, I am trying to maintain 2 thousandths neck tension. I have one caliber that I run 3 thousandths neck tension. But for the majority of them, I'm running 2 to 2.5 thou neck tension to get into numbers. But using the mandrels gets the inside the correct size. Your outside dimensions, if you have a bunch of one-fired cases, using bushings in this case, you're going to have all kinds of sizes. That's why the mandrels are really kind of useful for us guys that don't have a whole batch of just consistent brass. So that mandrel goes down through there and puts the hole where you're going to place put that bullet in there. And that's going to keep your neck tension consistent. That consistency with reloading is the number one key. And you want to try to do everything consistent from one end to the other. Well, neck tension is no different.
So with your mandrels and your bullets, actual projectile bullet, are you looking to have it a little undersized from the actual diameter of that bullet? What are you looking for here?
That's what we were talking about. So if I'm going through and I grab 10 bullets out of my box and they measure 264, I'm going to go and grab the mandrel that is going to place that at 262. I'm looking for about 2 thousandths neck tension.
Oh, so you're talking about 2 thousandths in diameter. You're not talking. Because I was wondering where you come up with the 2 thousandths, and I thought that was actual like
instance,
PSI. I was like,
so we have our 143 EDLX, and it measures 264. It's a 264. We're going to use a 262 mandrel to get our final dimension on our inside of our neck.
So that neck. So I was lost on neck tension because I've never heard that before. I just I'm not even using universal decapper. I'm still using the ball and pin.
Right. This is the best way to measure it when you have an actual measurement of what you have expanded the neck with a mandrel.
Mm-hmm.
So if I use a 262 mandrel and I measure a batch of brass that comes out of the mandrels, okay? And it gives me a measurement of outside dimension. That's how I'm going to measure that. Outside dimension. So when I go to seating my bullets, I measure the first 5, 6 to make sure that I have a 2 thousandths difference on the plus side to know that I have 2 thousandths neck tension.
And that's going to hold the bullet in there.
Hold the bullet cartridge. In
gotcha.
the tank.
Gotcha. Now it makes complete sense.
Now, when you go to your 223s, your 223s, there's a lot of 223s that are running 3, 4, 5 thousandths neck tension. I mean, they're really holding those bullets in there. But we're gonna not get on that track. But we're for hunting purposes, 2 thousandths neck tension, 2.5 thousandths neck tension is perfect. I have found. Sometimes you need to go to 3. It's just for tuning.
Okay. And that in the more neck tension, the higher the pressure inside the cartridge.
Longer it takes for that bullet to release from that neck. Yes.
Okay. So you want it to be consistent so you can have the same. Everything here is consistency. So you're going to
and that's why you want to reload as well, because some of your factory loads will not have that consistency. And
you never know. You can determine you kind of control your environment more, and then you put it to the bench, run it through a bunch of tests, and you get to this point where you're like, I know this round.
Mm-hmm.
If you grab a box of Federal or whoever, and they're going to fire pretty good, but you're going to be able to dial it in.
But you might have that one zinger.
You could. And a lot of times, like, oh, that was just me, or it could have been the bench, or it could have been the gun, or the wind, or a bunch of nonsense.
Bunch of
But you
variables.
could've-
Yeah.
You're gonna be 3-4 inch flyer here and there, but you can really dial your weapon in and control your craft and your environment by reloading your rounds and paying attention to what we're talking about here. So everything is very important to be consistent. Neck tension in the bullet, the shoulder on the cartridge. We've covered so much already. Let's move forward and see what else we can come up with.
Yeah. What was it? We're gonna talk about single stage and
No, it's the process that he's going through here. So, we were talking about the neck tension.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
getting ready to seat the bullet. What's next in the process, Josh?
So after we get done, doing the mandrels, and so we're probably gonna go through, and we're gonna prime them. And this is a big conversation. Every little discussion with reloading, I feel, has a different caveat. I prefer to do it the easy way. I will put it on my progressive and I will prime my cases. I will prime all my cases. And usually I will do that at the same time I am expanding necks.
Okay.
Using the mandrel. So I'll prime all those cases.
So you'll take it from the mandrel and start priming.
I will prime. I probably actually it's all the same process on my Hornady press or progressive press. It actually primes it before I start getting to the mandrels.
Okay. Yep.
Because it's just a down. It's just an upward motion of priming. It would do the same thing, and I know that you want to talk about this. We'll do that. The single stage press versus the progressive press. It's just that I'm able to do more things at once.
Right, and it saves you time. Right.
It saves time. Not that I have a problem with the single stage press, because I still use a lot of, there's a couple calibers that I still use that single stage press for everything. From resizing to seating. I will not do the priming and the mandrels with it, because if I'm stage mandrel, I want to do it with a progressive. But you can do the same thing with your single stage. Just drop a different measurement of mandrel in your single stage and do the whole batch again.
Now, do you have multiple progressive presses? Do you have just one progressive, or are you running multiple?
I have one in on the table, and I'm working on probably setting up a second one here in the next couple months when things kind of settle down a little bit. And then, of course, I have my single stage that's sitting right there that has the 300 rum and the 28 Nosler on it.
Nice, because it seems like when you're doing the progressive mandreling for your thousands, if you're setting up a progressive to do the mandrels in thousands, that would be money right there. It would cost you money, but it would also be quicker. It'd be nice to be able to get that dialed in, then run straight to now we're loading. But I haven't done the process you're doing. I'm kind of taking notes here.
I had to start small on the mandrels, and I found this out, and both of you will appreciate this. So I use the red box Hornady resizing die for most of my calibers, okay? But for the 280 and the 6.5 Creedmoor, it was shrinking the necks down so far that if I was just to use the 262 to mandrel it, I was crushing some cases.
Oh wow.
Even though that I was already lubing, I would take, graphite, the ball graphite Imperial balls, and I'd graphite the necks. I was still getting about 1 out of 20 cases. It would be just too much, especially on certain brass. It would just be too much, and it's crushing them. So that's why I started stage, and I found that out. I'm like, man, what do I have to do? So I had to go down another, 1,000ths, um, smaller, and start stage mandrel in my necks, expanding my necks because it was crushing my cases.
Here's an idea. You have 3 or 4 mandrel sizes. You start, at say 1,000th, then you go up 2,000ths and 3,000ths, right? Is there? I'm in construction, so we have these little step drills. You want to start with a 1/4 inch and 3/8, and goes to a half. Is there a mandrel you can set that has multiple steps on it, so when you press it down, it goes through tink, 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 tink?
Absolutely not.
Damn.
Nope. You're dreaming.
Time to patent.
Sorry.
Well, you could, I mean, you could sell one or buy one that has 4 stages on it, set it to the depth it needs. I mean, there takes some engineering, but that would be the kicker right there, because then you could set your depth based on what you needed.
The one thing when it comes to mandrels is when you buy a mandrel, you want something that is very smooth, like the carbide. 21st Century has a new one that's a black nitrate that's very, very slick. But you want a mandrel that is either carbide or something that's very, very smooth, because otherwise you really are going to have to lube all the necks or take a lot of time taking care of your mandrels.
So on a mandrel,
the mandrels are going to have some buildup.
On the base of the mandrel, are they shaped kind of like a boat tail bullet? They have like a little chamfer on it? Okay.
They certainly are.
Okay.
They certainly are. They're just kind of like a boat tail bullet going into your neck, coming down. All of your processes you want to come down on.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating, man.
Things you learn, right?
Dude, I'm like, my brain right now, I'm just like, damn.
So this is the funny thing about reloading. And so I had taken a little bit of break from reloading because I was guiding crane hunts, and where I work was just busier and all get out. So I hadn't reloaded for probably a year and a half, almost 2 years, just because of the cranes and the actual job that pays the bills.
It happens.
It happened. But it was the best thing that actually happened in a certain way, because when I got back into really getting back on the bench, there was just this massive information that was starting to come out online that you could read, you could hear, you could see on the steps of reloading. Reloading nowadays, I'll put it this way, however you want to go about it, there's so much information out there about reloading and the processes of it to get everybody familiar and kind of progressively up to date. There's I can't even express how much information and how many good people out there are to help reloaders learn this crap.
It truly is incredible. I've been doing this for a while, and I haven't even considered some of the concepts you're talking about this evening, and it's just, to me, last night we were at Luke's house last night, and this guy, he's like, he kind of reminds me of Vince Vaughn in Wedding Crashers, where he's like, I don't know, should we go on a date? Should we hug? Should we kiss? I don't know what we're doing. Are we standing on the front porch? Should I go in? Should I not? I'm sitting here like, is my neck pressure too tight? Should I do it this way? Should I do that? I'm like, all these questions going through my head now. I'm like, have I been doing it wrong? Have I been doing it right? I don't know. Am I? I don't know. I've reloaded some rounds. I've killed animals, and the hard part is now I'm just kind of like, maybe I should improve the process, just to get that extra step, because I have noticed some of these things throughout the reloading, my progression in the reloading realm, that, I asked about the neck dimples because I had that issue, but I never annealed, and I came up with a different solution. But now I want to anneal because I don't want to have to worry about that anymore and take that extra time that I've been using to press them in a certain way to where it wouldn't do that. And it's and also too taking the capping pin out because that ball and that seating it a little 2000s lesser on the neck, for resizing. I've had some rounds that haven't cartridge right, haven't chambered right, and I figured that out. And it's a never ending process, and I'm pretty good at my, getting my hunting rounds out the door. But I know I have lots of room for improvement. Just talking to Josh in this last hour, it's just, I know that there's, I would never even say I know anything, but I have so much more to learn.
Yeah,
It,
definitely.
it can be as complicated as you want to make it, and it can be as simple as you want to make it.
Can we just talk straight wall cartridges, please? Damn.
I mean, simply, if we're going to go back from the beginning, if you clean it, you deprime it, you anneal it, you resize it, you could do there's all kinds of steps in between that you can make it really complicated.
Right. So,
Well,
he's not saying that you can't just use your regular die. You know what I mean? Like the stages that I have,
can.
It's just you might not have that consistency. So you might have that one round that won't chamber and you're like, what the F?
Well, here's the reality. You have people that would just buy stuff off the shelf and never consider reloading.
Yeah.
If you're considering reloading, we already said it's not a financial investment that's positive. Mainly, I think of it as every other aspect of what you're doing. If I was going on a red stag hunt, I would know what that is, And if I was a serious hunter, which I am, not a serious rifle hunter, but serious hunter, we spend gobs of time with our arrows on the range, shooting,
Oh, yeah.
broadhead tuning. I mean, you're talking maybe on the equivalent scale of this, but we don't spend a lot of time making our broadheads.
No.
We spend a lot of time tuning to our broadheads.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm totally down, man. I'm ready to step it up.
Yeah, and this whole thing came about was a bear that I let walk at 485 yards, which I should be able to shoot. I was not confident at shooting that. And
me and you are going to talk about that later this week.
and getting my 308 dialed and being able to shoot that 500 yards, 600 yards, whatever it is, consistently. And to do that, I think I need to be able to reload my round and get familiar with what my rifle can do with that round. And, maybe you don't have to go to that extreme, but that's what I want to do.
Well, beyond taking things to the next step, right? You're creating more confidence in that bullet and your ability.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're testing trial and error, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you're creating confidence. Like, I know, there's no doubt this thing is dialed. The cartridge is not the problem. I know it. All I have to do is be able to shoot it that far.
Mm-hmm.
So the time on the bench, familiarity with the distance, of course, everybody's gonna be like, oh, I've seen Sniper, the Coriolis effect and all this stuff. You need a machine at 2258 or whatever. So, that's out. We're not talking about that. But you're going to spend time. You're creating confidence in yourself. So when that happens, when you pulled your scope up and you looked at that bear, what went through your head?
Not a whole lot.
Some doubt, right?
Oh, well, okay, yeah. There was tons of doubt. Number one, I've never shot that far before, so going into that hunt, I'm used to hunting Western Washington, 100 to 200 yards.
Did you know the speed of your bullet?
Well, I knew what the box said.
Yeah, right.
But I don't know consistently what that round was doing. It said 2,700 feet or whatever.
So with the bullets, they give you like a little graph on the box, says how many feet, per
feet per second.
Feet per second. Well, you can change that by your twist in your barrel. You can change that by the barrel length.
Yep.
All those things come into play. So what rifle were they shooting that from?
Yeah, I have no idea.
It could, you could be way off. So, chronographing, huge thing. Practice, huge thing. Knowing, your distance, huge thing. You got to have all these things in place. And this is just one of those steps. So when you get to that point, you can guarantee, like, I know This is going to happen.
And that's the confidence that I'm looking for in not only my rifle, but the round as well. And that's why I want to dive into reloading a lot more, because I want the consistency of the round, and for myself, and for me, I need to immerse myself in that.
I think
to
we're
get
going
to
do,
that point.
We're definitely going for part 2. Definitely going to have a part 2.
Yeah.
But let's wrap up the bullet. Let's get this thing ready to fire.
So we got everything done, and we're going to find out what, we're going to charge these cases with whatever we've set up with powder. The one trick that I'm going to tell you when it comes to seating bullets that I have found that I don't know if it's measurable, but we're going to seat these bullets. I lube the necks with the graphite. There's kind of a debate on whether to lube necks or not necks in the reloading industry. I personally do. But what I'm going to do is when I go to seat them, I'm going to go seat them, and I'm going to press down about halfway, and then I'm going to back that arm out of the press, and I'm going to spin that case, and then I'm going to press down it all the way to seat that bullet. So I was taught by some old timers that spinning that case around while you're resizing that bullet or pushing that bullet into that case helps you kind of get it straight, because straight is very important when it comes to seating that bullet.
That makes sense.
And another thing that I learned when I was going through this reloading stage of my life is that I started, because everything in the manual says overall length is what we're measuring with our calipers for consistency. So ogive is the most consistent measurement on the bullet that you're going to measure from the base of the case to that ogive. I mean, you can get a base, and this is how I do it. I get a base of what my overall length I want to be, but when I'm measuring my chambers, and finding out where the jam is, I'm using the ogive measurement. And the ogive is on the nose, just below the nose of the bullet. And I'm using Hornaday's Cullets, and I'm using Short Action Customs Cullets to measure ogive. I like my Short Action Custom Cullets the best, because I think it's closer to where the ogive actually is on the bullet and where it's jamming into the barrel. So I'm using, when you go through, and this is the reason why I'm going to explain why we use ogive so much, is that when you go through and you can measure 10 rounds that you went through and seated with your seating die, and I will guarantee you, if you just blindly, you got it set, you got it set to a length, all of them are going to measure differently. But when you set that resizing die to resize it to the ogive measurement, you're only going to get probably a half to a thousandths difference.
Oh.
Not to really get into measurements, like I said before, but we're literally, that ogive is so consistent in the manufacturing of that bullet, because that's a part of their nose, that's a part of the flight.
Right.
And
so
that
if you
ogive is very, very important, and it is a really good point to measure off of.
So you're not taking your
most consistent ammo.
So you're not taking your micrometer and going from the very, butt of the bullet, I guess, the bottom.
No, you're going from the tip to the base of the case.
From the base of the casing, not to the. Mm-hmm. So you're not measuring the whole The whole thing.
You're not measuring the overall length of it. You're measuring from the ogive, which is just below the nose of the bullet, to the base of the case. Is how you're going to measure your length.
You're not going to measure the flat spot.
Right. It's gonna when
No.
it curves into
No.
Like where it
doesn't
actually
even get into that. No.
where it locks in.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes complete sense.
So I'm sitting here doing the Google thing, looking up the ogive. This, they use this ogive in ballistics and aerodynamics. They actually designed it for the use of missiles, space shuttles, and stuff. So probably before that, they had some sort of other calculation, but the ogive is the roundly tapered end of a 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional object. Yeah. So that's what it is. So you measure from the rounded upmost portion from the base to there.
It's below the nose, below the tip. Obviously, below the nose is below the tip of the bullet, and then you have the ogive, and your ogive is the diameter of your bore.
Well, hold on, 1 second. So on a Hornady
ballistic
bullet, you're gonna do it from like where the plastic starts. You know how you have the ballistic tip on the Hornady bullet? Yeah, where it's the tip of it is actually plastic. So you're actually going to do it from that from
where the tip starts.
No.
Where the tip starts on the bullet, so where it meets the copper.
Yeah, so like where the copper starts, not where the plastic is, not on the top of the plastic.
Is that correct?
Okay. So get a bullet out.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Hold on, we're getting a bullet out.
Get a burger bullet or an ELX out.
Dave's looking for one.
You're asking for too much here.
So you have the tip of your bullet. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. That's opposite of the bottom, and that goes into the case.
Yes.
Okay. So if you come down from the nose of the bullet, there's going to be a place that starts the ogive, and it's right around where the bearing. It's right above where the bearing surface, what we call the bearing surface of the bullet, starts. Okay. And it's where the nose starts getting bigger and gets into the bearing surface.
So I have my micrometer here.
Okay.
I got a Nosler AccuBond 7mm here. I'm measuring the overall length of this bullet.
Okay.
It is 14.7.
Okay.
That's just the bullet.
That's just the bullet.
That's just the whole length of the bullet.
Yep. Now, if I measure down to the ogive, what I'm assuming is the ogive, it's 14.0 straight up. So it's actually 7/1000 of an inch smaller. Yeah, it's 7,000.
How long did you say that bullet is?
It says 14.8, and when I measure to the ogive where the radius starts, 14.0. 14.0.
Without having an ogive bullet, you really don't know where approximately that ogive starts. And both of them are relative between the Hornady and the short action customs. I found the short action customs gets you closer to where the ogive is when you're measuring a bullet. But you're coming down off that nose quite a bit. I'm going to give you a for instance here. Where is, that's sitting out there by the 20 Nosler. All right, hang on 1 second.
Okay.
He's looking for something, and I'm going to let the audience know. I wrote a note to Dave here, and I'm changing this. So I wrote a note to Dave. It's like, we should have a T-shirt that says "You had me at Mandrill." I'm thinking we should change Mandrill to ogive because that's a real thumper.
Okay, so I have 195 grain ELO from Burger. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the overall length. So I'm just comparing your statement here. The overall length is. Oh, wait a minute. Is that zeroed out? Yeah, it is. So I'm at 1.622. Okay. My ogive is just a hair over 3/4 of an inch. It's 760 thousandths.
All right, Josh, you're gonna have to send me a.
Oh, I get what he's saying.
Long ways, even on that nozzler bullet.
Say that. So say that one more time. What was your overall length?
My overall length of this bullet
1 point what?
is 1.620.
1.620. And you said it's 3/4 of an inch, so you're at 0.7.
And I'm measuring to the ogive. This is from base to ogive is 0.765.
So you're measuring to where the radius starts.
Yes.
Damn.
And that's using
I was way off.
yes,
Yeah. So
way
we were actually
Measured
needed to
way
go
too
like
long. Way short.
where it starts tapering in.
Yeah, because that's your barrel diameter. The nose means nothing.
Nothing.
It's resting way off the lands and grooves.
Yeah. Oh
Yep.
shoot.
That's where that bullet's starting to, exactly. That's where that bullet is that's grabbing into your throat.
Yeah, so that bullet could be 3 inches long, and it just.
Yeah, that makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where those PRCs are getting, because that's a freaking long ass bullet, dude. Any of the PRC 6.5 PRC, the bullet's like, it's huge.
Well,
there's
I don't want to say too much here.
No, we're not going to get into that.
Why that PRC shoots as well as it does.
Well, I was thinking the same thing about the 6.5 because I look at that bullet and I'm thinking, is there anything in the case?
Yeah, there is. Why?
Doesn't look like it's seated that deep.
Think about this. The 6.5 Creedmoor is a 308 case, neck down and push down.
Yeah,
That's all it is. You're able to use the same volume of case and push a 264 projectile out of it, and it works great.
Yeah, and you're getting a lot faster speeds, and yeah, it shoots a lot flatter.
Yeah,
it's a nice. Yeah.
Are we
6.5's a nice round.
Are we flying yet? Are we ready to let one rip? Seating the bullet, right?
Yep. Primers in.
And strap the chronograph on, or set the lab radar up and let them rip.
After you let them rip, we have to take our
After I let them rip. So I've changed the way I've done this because of education, I guess. I do not do any of my testing. Of course, I'm kind of restricted at my range. I can only go 200 yards.
Same with our local range too.
Probably an hour west of town.
Our local range is out to 200 yards as well.
So I do most all of my testing at 200 yards now.
So is that what you are actually?
I mean, I'm talking about group size. I do my velocity test at 200 yards because with me hanging that magneto on, if I can, if I have a good day, she groups real well. But I do everything at 200 yards. I would prefer to try to do I would prefer to do my testing at 300 yards. Big piece of paper, 3-inch circles, and just start testing.
How many rounds are you going to test at a time before you change the load, just to go up or down?
So I typically do not. Once I settle on a load, I've never changed my load.
No, but so let's say you're at 44.2, and then you have some at 44.4 or whatever. How many are you actually doing? How many rounds are you?
To get your load.
So I will probably. nowadays, with the components shortage that, or lack of, access to components, I will probably take me about 50 rounds to 60 rounds to verify that I'm ready to go. And then I'll just start reloading a bunch of those, and then I'll just verify them at distances. But once I figure out that I have and I'm going to use the Creedmoor, the 6.5 Creedmoor as an example. Once I'm at 41.5 grains and 100 yards, 200 yards, 300 yards, 400 yards, I have impact. I have good groups. I have an extreme spread in my velocity that I can't fix because it won't fix. Doesn't matter what I do. But it's consistent. Out at 300 yards, I have a triangle on the same point of impact that I do at 200 yards, and then I have the same point of impact at 400 yards. I'm good with that load.
But
I'm not talking about big, gnarly, out of, 4-inch triangles. I'm talking try to be in sub MOA, groups. And I'm going to use Kirk's using the same load. Kirk's gun is using the same load that I use from my gun. The only difference that I've done with Kirk's is all of Kirk's brass is annealed because it was before I got the annealer. Kirk with the 41.5 grains, same overall length, same everything. He's got that confirmed and verified out to 700 yards right
now. Dang.
No, he shot it out to 1,000. I have video.
He's verified.
He shot it at a rock. Verified 1,000.
Damn.
It's just having, it's just going
nuts.
out and doing it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The 6.5 is a good round. So what I'm thinking about doing here, Josh, is because we're working on a 308 round. I think we landed on 44.2, maybe it was 43.8 to start. I was thinking about doing 10 rounds and then jumping up, the
3/10,
2/10 for 10 rounds, and then keep on going up for 10 rounds. Should I be loading more than that?
I wouldn't do any more, especially where you're starting. Me personally, I would not start any. I wouldn't go any more than 10 rounds.
Okay. So
you spend a bunch of time putting powder and bullets.
Once you start getting into that top end, you're probably going to, depending on everything, you're probably going to start seeing some pressure signs.
Okay.
But that's just my personal opinion.
And what I'm looking at is not a serious jump in feet per second.
What you're looking for is you're looking for a very low steps in
not the
velocity.
Not the 20s and 30s, but maybe like
not the
sub
20s and 30s.
Sub 10.
Yeah, 10, 8, 6, 5, things like that. Yes.
Perfect.
So I did mine. I have a 270 WSM, and I loaded that. I've been loading it for 17 years about. But that rifle, we chronographed it at 28.76, and the low end was 28.74, and I think that was 20 rounds we did on the chrono. And I have a bunch loaded in that same weight, but it's 62.5 grains of N165, and very consistent.
He's talking about powder right now.
Yeah, the powder.
If you don't know what that is.
Yeah, the Vita40 N165 is a type of powder. And that, 62.5 grains. And I think, I can't remember where I started at. Maybe it was 61.8 or 61.6. Can't remember where I started. But settled at 62.5 and shoots very consistent, velocities. Shoots really good on paper in the range. Just got to get out and put something in front of the damn thing. But every time I go on a hunt, I'm like, this is a reason for me to get a rifle. I bought that. I got drawn for a cow tag, an extended season cow tag, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna buy this. What is it? It's a who makes those lever action? Dang it.
Marlin?
Yeah, Marlin 4570. I'm going to shoot a 4570 at the cow with fixed sights under 200 yards because I'm seeing them all the time, like 50, 60 yards away. I'm like, I can get within 200 yards of a cow. I'm going to shoot her with open sights in this 4570 old school because I was reading the book American Gun. And I'm like, oh, I got to get a 4570. That's so cool, That book made me buy more guns. So anyhow, I got the 4570. Then I started switching it up. I'd go hunting, for spring bear. And I was like, I'm going to bring the 270. I'm going to hunt this type of terrain. Then I'm going to bring the 4570. I'm going to hunt this type of terrain. I'm going to be in the bush, so I'm bringing the 4570. But I mean, you have to stick with something. You have to be consistent, and I have not been that. And I'm gonna take Dave's challenge this year. I'm gonna stick to a gun. I'm gonna stick to my round. I'm gonna get very proficient at the distance because I missed a bear at 480 plus, and not a good feeling. When I had everything, I had the chronograph, I had the dope chart, I had everything, and I missed my holdover. I didn't have dialable turrets like I have now. Now I can dial in my turrets.
Mm-hmm.
So I just have to get better with that and actually shoot those 500-yard distances, 600-yard distances, dialing up the turret. Because, holdovers, that's not good.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to shooting, I think just go out and do it.
Yeah.
Just go out and try it. I mean, it's not, don't put any pressure on yourself. Just go, I'm going to go out and I'm going to shoot 513 and 763, and you're not hurting anything. And just get more confidence in your equipment, in yourself. I've had to do the same thing. I mean, that 300 rum, I had confidence in with that thing because I shot that. That's the only thing I shot. And I mean, I was in tune. I knew what I did. The same thing. I have a little 3x9 40 loophole scope on that thing, so everything was holdover. And but I knew where I needed to be, and I've taken some shots that, I was very confident when I pulled the trigger, and it worked out.
That's where I want to be.
I was in Alaska, and that was the longest shot I've ever taken. It was in Alaska on my my blacktail was 405 yards.
Yeah.
I personally have never shot that far with that gun up to that point. Ever.
That's a good shot on a small animal too. I mean,
yeah,
blacktails aren't big.
I'm just curious, like, how many valleys you had to cross to get there. Because I watch a meat eater, and those, they're straight up and down for those blacktails.
What's that?
The meat eater show when they had they went hunting for blacktail in one of these islands up there, Kodiak Island or something.
I think it's Kodiak, yeah.
And
it's Kodiak.
And it was straight up and down. They were up and down one ridge, checking in a little pocket. There's a little dip here.
It wasn't that bad, actually. It was truly no different than being in Arizona.
Oh, okay.
I personally thought.
Plus the grizzlies.
Yeah, when they have the head the size of a flipping 55-gallon drum, I personally got to see one from about 2 miles away on our hunt, and then when we got back into Kodiak, we got to see one on the side of the road, and it's like, at 2 miles away, me and my cousin's dad were looking at him, with our naked eyes going, holy moly, that's big. And my cousin
from 2 miles away
just ran into him. Yeah, it was interesting.
He's 2 miles away, he starts walking towards you like, we better pack our shit. Let's go.
Yeah, it's time to go.
Running the other direction, thank God.
That's awesome.
It's hilarious. Well, we could talk all night, we could go around this, and we're going to have a round 2. Part 2, we're going to dig into this a little further.
Definitely.
we got to start. We're gonna get on the press a little bit. Let's get some rounds down range and then come back with some feedback. And you're gonna talk to Josh this week about your round for your 308. So let's do something. Let's put that round together. Get on the range. Have a round
Let's
2.
talk a little bit about load development, in kind of the process of that. I mean, I know we kind of sketched on that a little bit today.
Yeah, let's dive in.
But load development, where to start, different practices people have. And I'm not talking about people as in, that's myself. In just the industry itself has been really, really informative in the last couple of years that I have found. There's lots of information and there's lots of different ways you can go about it. But when you boil it all down, it's pretty much equal with all of them, the F-class shooters, the PRS shooters. When you boil it all down, they're pretty damn similar.
So if you were going to talk to somebody who was going to be starting reloading, where are you going to send them?
Where am I going to send them for what?
Starting information on reloading. Where would you send them to look for the basic information, like a website or something? Excuse me.
So there's 2 people that I really, really have learned the most from, and that's Eric Cortina and Modern Day Sniper, which is in you guys' backyard. You guys are very fortunate with the people that you have in your state. You got Scott Satterley and you got Kalen and Phillip from Modern Day Sniper. Those guys really, really have taught me a lot just by listening to them and watching watching their videos. And they cover all the gamuts.
So beside Ridgeline Hunting Podcast, you're going to look for.
Yeah. I mean, that's the drawback to that.
Yeah.
But
no, that's great.
We're joking here. We want people to get good, accurate information.
That's right, and that's what we're here for. I mean,
Eric Cortina and where a friend of mine, and it was just a single deal. He says, you need to listen, and I have not, up until this point in 2020, I had not listened to a podcast a day in my life. And a buddy of mine says, you need to listen to episode such and such of Modern Day Sniper, and you will get educated of what I'm trying to tell you. And I'll tell you what, I probably have listened to that episode probably 12 times. And that got me to a point of where I was starting to create consistent ammo. And then I started digging and learning more. And I realized that I was taught. I mean, I was taught the way I was taught, but there's different ways to express that. And the number one thing when I started, you need a chronograph. That's the number one thing. If you're a reloader, you need a chronograph. You can't do it without it.
That's the next order.
So we're at the end of it all. When you look at you got your chronograph speeds for your ammunition, everything's dialed in. Do you have that little buffer of plus or minus in your feet per second? The chronograph is going to tell you a lot of what you need to know based on the weight of your bullet, the speed of your bullet, and the distance, because it's trajectory. So that's also going to let you know all your distances based on mathematics, just on mathematics alone. So, it is very paramount to have that information at hand and be able to have it reliably happen over and over and over again. So I've learned a lot tonight. I have some things I have to do, and one of them is check how much money I have in the bank and go from there.
Well, the one thing too that I do want to express too, and this is very important along with the chronograph, is that there's these reloading manuals out there. and I'm going to use one for an example. Burgers. If you get into Burgers Reloading Manual, it shows you in there how to start your reloading process. You're going to measure your chamber with your bullet. You're going to take the barrel off of the barrel. You're not going to have the barrel on it, and you're going to measure where that bullet barely touches the lands. Or you're going to use the Hornady gauge in where you're going to just, it's a feel. A lot of guys, there's two ways of doing it, but mostly I've used the Hornady gauge, and I've just barely touched the lands, and I do that 10 times to get to where the longest point of my throat is in my gun. Okay. And then, there's Burger Manual says, okay, if you're hunting, you're gonna test it 20 thousandths off and 40 thousandths off and 60 thousandths off and 80 thousandths off. That's going to be your overall length. Overall length has to do, it's a complex system. Overall length dictates how much pressure and how much room you have in the case. There are just so many variables that go in this, but your overall length is a very important factor in accuracy. Now you're going to come in and out of your node with your overall length.
We definitely have to have part 2 because I have 5 more questions, and people want to know. The people want to know, So, yeah, let's just do some R&D and come back to it and get things going.
Yeah. So Josh, what we'll do is I'm going to start loading some 308, get that thing dialed, get the chrono, and start putting some rounds down range, and I'll probably have 20 more questions to ask. Because the equipment that I have, I don't have, some of these things, but I'm going to do it with the equipment that I have and then come back and say, it's time to upgrade.
This is the thing that I have found out with chronos. I started off with a Caldwell chrono.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think that thing lies to me to this day. I'm on my second one, but I got the Magneto, and I love my Magneto speed. I would not trade it for the world. I wouldn't even sell it to anybody. But the one thing that I like about the lab radar is I'm able to test velocities and group sizes or interpret group sizes all at the same time is the benefit to the lab radar. The Magneto speed is hanging off your barrel, it's strapped onto your barrel, and you can't. There's certain guns that don't mind that, but you're still screwing around. You're screwing with the harmonics of the barrel by strapping that Magneto speed on. But it gives you very good velocity speeds.
Yeah, that's what we
100%.
That's what we chronographed my rifle with. Was a Magneto speed. A good friend of mine, he has he shoots an A303 with hand cast bullets. He does all this stuff in his garage, and he's I think I might have talked about him before, but he's like testing densities of the bullets and all this different grains, making sure they're the same weight, and actually won a competition, open sights A303, so pre 30-06, and so he brought that out. We went to the range and chronographed the 270, and we got good consistent velocities. But you don't want to target shoot with that thing on there because it's going to affect the harmonics, which changes your point of impact. So it's just for getting the speed. With what he's talking about, if you shot through it, I've never seen it, but from what it sounds like, is it's making calculations based on the variance in speed. That's going to tell you if it was here, it's here. So it's going to be able to tell you that information. I'm extra interested in that one, but start at A and go to B.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Josh, this has been very informational. We will do a part 2, and
I hope it sounds good when you get done.
oh, it will.
Oh, they always do.
Yeah, don't worry about that. Well, that's my department. It will sound great. But yeah, so we are definitely going to do a part 2, so look out for that. All these episodes are going to be coming out in 23. Right now it's still 2022, but this will be our second episode of 2023. So, yeah, we would like to thank everybody that has been following us on this journey, and we're continuing, and we're going to just keep on rolling with it. So, thank you very much for listening, and have a good night.
Oh, hold on.
What?
If you want to know where to find Josh, you can't, because he's not doing this for money. He's here tonight volunteering to give us good information.
That's
I want to
right.
put that in there.
Yeah.
Josh has been more than gracious with us. He's a friend of ours that loads for him. Highly respected, the person that we have had on here several times.
Yes.
You guys will know Kirk Douglas. We've had him on 3 or 4 shows, and he trusts Josh to load his rounds exclusively because they're friends, and he's not doing it for a commercial adventure or anything like that. And he doesn't want any customers, so forget about it.
Yeah, he's gonna be busy with us.
Send it on down.
So thank you everybody for listening, and again, you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iRadio, Spotify. Actually, anywhere you can listen to a podcast. Also on our YouTube page, that is Ridgeline Hunting. Here soon, we will be videoing it to just give you that video experience. We're still trying to figure everything out to do that. But right now, you can get the audio on YouTube, especially actually on our YouTube as well. We've been doing a lot of YouTube shorts, and we're actually starting to do more video. It has gone cold. Previously, but we're ramping back up. So join us on YouTube, Ridgeline Hunting. Also on Instagram, we have the Ridgeline Hunting podcast, and also on Ridgeline Hunting. You can follow us on Instagram as well. And I just started a Twitter page. I just started a Twitter.
He doesn't know what to do with it yet. Check out the Instagram. Today, I went on a killer duck hunt. I posted a little live this morning, and I will have some hunt information or some hunting videos on there from our edits this afternoon coming up in the next couple days.
Yeah.
Shout out to Dog Millie.
Yeah, definitely follow that on the Ridgeline Hunting podcast. The Instagram page is doing well. It's growing pretty fast, so let's keep that going. But thank you again. And yes, we will have a part 2, so be looking out for part 2. And thank you again, Josh. This has been fantastic.
Good night, everyone.